Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we're going to be once again talking about the controversial Kotaku editor, Alyssa Mercante, who is known for many things, including being a hypocrite and someone who turns a blind eye in her journalism towards facts that don't serve her own agenda. And she is someone who has routinely labeled gamers as bigots while also hypocritically making bigoted statements against people based on the color of their skin. She has also made many virtue signaling campaigns, like recently talking about the dangers of ageism in the industry, while only a year ago saying being ageist is okay when it's about old white dudes and games journalism. On top of that, about 2 months ago, she openly invited people to come physically fight her if they have differing opinions, where several content creators took her up on her offer, but Alyssa would respond with a crazy set of terms that basically allowed her to duck the situation, even in the name of raising money for charity with these fights. And speaking of charity, recently Alyssa has gotten a lot of attention with this charity she is supporting. So she has claimed many times over that she has raised over $20,000 for a charity called Trans Lifeline. And as always, it's a great thing if people want to support charity and help those in need, but the reality of the situation is a lot of charities are scams, and a lot of them focus more on paying themselves than the people who are the center and the focus of the charitable actions. And I think that's what's going on with Trans Lifeline, because the people running this organization are making six-figure salaries while the volunteers presumably make nothing. And on top of that, there have been many claims that there are misappropriated funds within the organization. And on top of that, there's just some other concerning things about the goals and the means at which this company is achieving their supposed goals. Now, when it comes to doing research and intentionally omitting facts that make their agenda not look good, that is just par for the course when it comes to Alyssa, and clearly with this charity. And you can see her motivations, or at least some of her motivations for doing this recent campaign. Do I think Alyssa cares about trans people and wants to help them out? Yes, I do. But I also think there's other agenda that she's trying to serve. And you can see even in her promotional post for this charitable action, she's wearing a shirt that is mocking Smash JT, a content creator that she is beefing with. On top of that, she would expose herself by going into a stream and openly bragging to people she dislikes about how much money she raised for this Trans Lifeline charity. So you can see this post here. Alyssa Mercante left lurker mode tonight on Saturday Night Hypnosis, came into my chat and tried to brag about how she raised $20,000 for trans people in her stream. So let's hear a little bit of this clip.
Here,
is it really Alyssa? Is it really her?
Please tell me it's true.
I would bet any. Why would you get up here and start bragging about the $20K you raised for?
I don't think it's her, bro.
Oh, it might be her.
Come on up here and state that. We'll kick Ryan. You know what I'm saying?
Wait,
it ain't my show, but if it was me, I would give you 5 minutes of uninterruptible.
I would bring her on. Yeah. Huh? I would bring her on. Yeah, 100%.
I would give you 5 minutes of uninterrupted. I'm going to say everything I want to say about you guys, and then we'll go from there. Hey, they really think we care that they raised $20,000. Look, I don't care. Congratulations.
Well, dude, Trace, I said
you're not allowed to view this screen. There it is, baby.
So I think what happened here is important for two reasons. Number one, it shows where her intentions lie, right? We know she probably cares about trans people, but I also think she wants to raise this money to rub it in the face of people she dislikes. And that seems very obvious based on this behavior right here. But on top of that, there's a second reason this is important. It's because she brought awareness among people who criticize her about this organization she is trying to support. I believe if Alyssa just raised this money and then kept it within her audience, nobody would have questioned it. But because she went into the literal lion's den of her enemies, now people are investigating this Trans Lifeline and they're finding some pretty concerning things. So let's look into Trans Lifeline. So here is their statement: radical community care. Trans Lifeline provides trans peer support for a community that's been divested from police since day one. We're run by and for trans people. And you can see Alyssa officially supporting this campaign and citing their About section. To sum it up, they have really three primary purposes. They have a hotline for people who can call, and also they have these micro grants that can be used to pay off the expenses of legal name changes and updated IDs, as well as specialized support for trans people who are incarcerated. Now, the first two things make a lot of sense, right? A hotline for people who need it, and also the payments for legal name changes. I mean, that just is an expected cost of someone who is trying to transition, right? That makes sense. But a lot of people are talking about the incarcerated part. Like, there's little information on it. It's very vague. Like, are they incarcerated? Are they charged? Are they found guilty? What crimes did they commit? Like, where is this money going and to what people? But anyways, let's focus on some of the narratives behind this organization and their about section and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think it really speaks for itself. So right here, financial redistribution. They blame essentially this entire situation on the, and I quote, crisis of capitalism. And here you can see their goal of equity, not equality. Equity-based processes addresses the failures of disparate levels of privilege and access caused by colonialism, white supremacy, ableism, and transmisogyny by prioritizing the needs of those who have been the intended targets of these systems. As you can see, a lot of buzzwords in there. And here's another section saying dismantling white supremacy. Dismantling white supremacy at a structural level means centering the people in our communities who face the most barriers to economic justice, especially our incarcerated trans siblings. So there's a big focus on helping out incarcerated trans people. And you can see they have raised over $500,000 for incarcerated trans people, but also raised over $1 million for people or trans people to get updated IDs. So it's very odd, this like ratio of expenditures here, but if you see that total of money right there, and then you look at their expenses for the year 2022, for example, things aren't adding up. So these are required disclosures of their revenue and their expenses. And you can see in the year 2022, their expenses were $5.3 million. That actually outweighed their revenue. How is this happening? Well, it's largely because they are paying themselves so much. Again, this is publicly disclosed stuff. It's required. You can see some of their top members of Trans Lifeline paying themselves six-figure salaries, including the co-executive directors paying themselves, respectively, $154,000 and $142,000. There is no way you can look at me and justify paying yourself that much for running a charity. Even taking away a small portion of their salary could do a lot more for the people they're trying to help. And also looking at these salaries, I'm sure people defending this organization will say something like, that is basically the cost of living. No, it's not. That is doubling and nearly tripling the average American salary. But you can see where all of the money is going. And also, there have been claims that they had to address in the past. So you can see an old email made out to their supporters some time ago saying, "Dear friend, we have some exciting updates for you in this email about the future of Trans Lifeline. But before we tell you about our progress, we need to share with you some difficult news. Below is a joint statement from our current leadership of Trans Lifeline and the founders of our organization." So basically, to sum up down here, dear community, as promised earlier this year, we want to update you on the circumstances surrounding the departure of the Trans Lifeline founders, Nina Chabal and Greta Martella. Their departure has been planned for some time, but was accelerated by the following events. Earlier this year, the board launched an investigation into the financial transactions of Nina and Greta and concluded, with the advice of legal and financial professionals, that there was a significant spending of Trans Lifeline funds outside the scope of the current budget. Much of this spending was on unauthorized project, neither approved by the board nor made clear to donors, which Greta and Nina sincerely believed was for the good of the trans community. Unfortunately, their unauthorized project ran afoul of Trans Lifeline's obligations to the 501c3 tax laws. So let's pause before we read the next part. Let's sum up what happened. So basically, you have two of the founding members misappropriating funds for their own personal projects, and they also ran afoul, aka violated federal tax laws in the process. What do you think's going to happen? Well, here's their punishment. In recognition of the many personal sacrifices Nina and Greta made to build Trans Lifeline, we are pleased to jointly announce that all parties have reached an agreement to allow Nina and Greta's project to continue as a separate entity, with an agreement that they will adhere to a payment plan to return the disputed funds to Trans Lifeline. We wish each other the best success in the many efforts underway to serve the trans community at a time it has needed it more than ever. So basically, they're giving them a payment plan. They're not even asking for the money back, the donations that they use for their own personal project. They're giving them a payment plan to pay back what they took from the donations. And on top of that, they're literally getting a pat on the back and this like happy departure because they believe this is all in the name of helping out the trans community, even though the funds were going to something that the donors didn't even know about. That is a deeply concerning thing, by the way. So let's talk about the volunteers of this organization. So there's not many requirements. Basically, you have to be trans. It sounds like here, because we offer peer support, hotline, and microgrants volunteers, positions are only open to trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming identified people. On top of that, you can see here the requirements are basically none. There are no minimum education requirements for any position. We do not penalize employment history gaps, and we consider non-traditional work experiences, which is kind of a bit concerning, especially when you're dealing with very sensitive and tough topics and situations as a result of having something like the hotline and also knowing how to use the funds properly for these micro grants. But on top of that, the hotline itself isn't even really that available. Look at this. As of January 1st, 2024, Trans Lifeline hotline operating hours are Monday through Friday. So if you're having a crisis on the weekend, well, the Trans Lifeline is not open for you. And on top of that, most of them close early in the day, including 6 p.m. if you're on the Pacific Coast. So if you have a crisis after 6 p.m., well, they're not there for you, which is very, very odd. And going beyond that, they have recommendations of what you should do if you can't reach the hotline because it's not available. They tell you to try another hotline, but warn you that a lot of these lines will engage in emergency first responders and law enforcement and have differing levels of trans competency. Obviously, this is a very complicated issue because calling these first responders might out someone who's trying to hide their identity, but at the same time, basically having this flat policy where they won't call law enforcement no matter what you're saying to them. I think the only exception on their website is if you're threatening other people, but when it comes to things involving yourself, it seems like they will not tell you anything or tell anyone else to come support you. In fact, in their harm reduction panel here, they say that they are prepared to talk to you about your coping mechanisms and the choice that you safely like to make, and that they'll never tell you to stop something that works for you. And some of these things include substance use, underground economy work, or self-injury. They will not tell you to stop if these things work for you. If you claim it works for you, they will not discourage you from stopping those things, which is very interesting and potentially dangerous in some situations. But if you are a cis person who wants to support the cause, well, you can't work the hotline and you definitely can't work with the micro grants, but you can still do work for them by providing video production and animation and designs for them. And also, of course, you can raise money for them. But that goes back to this whole thing, right? I think nobody would have dug into this Trans Lifeline if Alyssa had not gone into this stream and tried to brag about it. Like I said, I think she does support trans people and cares about them, but I think there's an ulterior motive that's also in the mix, and that is to flex on people and to try to shame people with the money that she has raised. It's nice to try to raise things for charity, but it's not a very good look when you're doing it seemingly, at least in some part, to spite other people you don't like. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Obviously, pretty controversial topics, so feel free to share your thoughts about them in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.